show you guys where I am, and chat a little bit, and I'm going to ask you some questions. All right? I am at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis, and I'm looking at the Basilica of St. Mary in downtown Minneapolis. That was built in 1907 and finished in 1913. And I just want you to see the contrast between that and our modern city built of glass and steel in Minneapolis. I saw the question about the conversation. We're going to be doing that Friday. We're going to meet at the Apostles' Table and on Zoom. And then over here, you guys see this? This is the Walker Art Center. Notice it's made out of brick. It has minimal windows. And then the building in the back of it is also part of the Walker. It's made out of newer materials, probably steel or aluminum. Or as they say in Britain, aluminium. And I am on the bridge that goes from Loring Park to the Sculpture Garden. And I want to ask you guys a question. There's our famous cherry and spoon. Over there you have a sculpture to the word love. Do you guys see that? Love. No, I didn't make it. It's my last name. That image has also showed up on a stamp. So my question to you is, this is contemporary modern art. How is this? Do you see any future references to speed or motion or violence? See if you see any futurist work. You might want to put your questions in the chat. I can't. It's really windy. I can't hear very well right now. So, Angelica, if you get any questions, I'm not sure. Greg, you know if the museum's open? I don't know. I can find out when I leave. But this is a very modern space. Notice what it's lacking. There isn't pillars, lots of big rocks, right, and temples. Something has changed in art. This sculpture garden was opened in 1988. It's not very old. So I want to come downstairs and show you something. We're down the stairs of the bridge. Oh wait, let's go downstairs. So this bridge is made out of steel, not stone. Steel is a very modern material in the sense that we use it to build significant structures. They had steel in the Iron Age. They made weapons with them. And I think that can go back to 3000 BC. But they didn't build things like this out of it. All right. So this is going to be I'm coming up to the first sculpture that I want to ask you guys a question about.
Somebody's asking, so was the use of steel kind of a way to leave the past behind?
Well, it was the way they used steel because we had a whole Iron Age after the Bronze Age, in anywhere from like 3000 to 1000, 1500 BC. They knew how to create iron and make small things with it. But what it was is our ability to mine iron ore and make huge structures with it, like skyscrapers. But yeah, it was a way to leave the history behind, but it was our technology of how to transform steel. All right, so you guys are looking at a sculpture by Matthew Monahan. It was made in 1972. Can anybody guess what the title is of this? I'll get up a little closer. This is made out of bronze and steel and rebar. So
Bronze man.
it's what?
Totally bronze man.
It's bronze. But can you guess what the title is of this? Who is this? Who is this figure?
Something to do with his extended hand, like helping hand or something.
Maybe a helping hand, like a nice gesture. I'll give you a hint. This is a character from the ancient world, from Greek and Roman mythology. This is Hephaestus or Vulcan. He guess what he did? He transformed steel and metal. So Hephaestus was the god of metals. So isn't that interesting? So we're in a modern sculpture garden, and there's a reference to an ancient Greek god and Greek mythology, but you have no formal properties in the artwork that tell you this is Hephaestus, correct? How would you know that this is Hephaestus without the title? Is there any clues? Don't be shy. Maybe it's the metal. It doesn't have legs, correct?
Maybe the way he's pointing.
Well, I mean, I can point. Am I Hephaestus? Was that Lauren? Right?
Yes. Now you're
I'm
Hephaestus.
joking, right? Like human
I
beings
know.
point. But no, I mean it makes sense because it's the most obvious gesture. I'm not dismissing that comment at all. But it's
Yeah,
what
but
I'm
he
getting.
said his face, maybe.
Maybe his face.
But if you were like a historian, you wouldn't really be able to like discern which character from like ancient history this would be.
You mean you have to be a historian?
Well, like you have to be really familiar with that character, otherwise you could really
Yeah,
impose any person on it.
it's true. It's true. Yeah, maybe the clothes. The clothes are reference to like a toga being draped around you. That's not a bad like catch seeing that, but that's a little hard to discern. Yeah, you'd have to know something, and I don't see any clues visually.
Lots of people are saying that he was known for being ugly, so
Well,
they're
there you go. You
saying
got a
that his
smashed
face
face. You got a
probably.
smashed face. So notice that in this temple to modern art, the Walker Sculpture Garden, that we have a reference to the ancient world. Isn't that interesting? So it's not if this was a sculpture from the ancient world, it would be a detailed sculpture of Vulcan working with metal. Does that make sense? Okay, now I want to show you another ancient world biblical reference at the Walker Art Center. So that I think the Hephaestus is a great example of almost all modern art. When you're looking at it, it might not be obvious what it is, but it is something. It might be referencing something. Not always, but you might not know what it is unless you read the title. Any thoughts about that?
So do you think like modern art needs a title then, or can it just exist?
Oh, does it need a title? Well, maybe sometimes and maybe sometimes not. Here's a nice little new piece of art. Is that bronze inside the sidewalk? Oh, look at this. This is bronze, guys. The shadow. It's cast in bronze. On our way to the next sculpture. No, that's a good point. Um, modern art may need a title when visually there's no clues to what it is. And if it doesn't have a title, then people can project on it, right? That like, oh, it's just a guy pointing, or it's a smashed face guy. Maybe he was in a car accident. So if you don't have a title, your mind can invent things, correct? But with ancient art, that's not something we do. When you see Zeus, it's Zeus. When you see Athena, Athena. When you see Hephaestus, it's Hephaestus. Does that make sense? This is a huge shift to the modern, where things get ambiguous, not as clear. Okay, so this is the gateway to the sculpture garden. Do you guys see these marble pillars, these sculptures? What does this remind you of from the first week of class? Yeah, that's similar, but they're not the same shape. They're the same idea. They're made out of marble. They're standing. They could be like the standing stones from the
I
Neolithic
know
period.
that it's Neolithic.
Yeah, it's Neolithic. Guess what the title of this piece is? It has a title. It was made by a guy named Martin Purrier, who is one of our most kind of beloved living African American artists. Not that he needs that distinction, but he happens to
Some
be African American.
suggestions for the name are teeth and reverse obelisk.
Reverse obelisk. I like that because guess what? This has two titles. This is Gog and Magog. Do you guys know who Gog and Magog, the Gog and Magog reference from the Bible? It's from the Old Testament. This is Gog and Magog. So I don't know which one. I'm assuming that's Gog and this is Magog. If you look up Gog and Magog, Gog is a person, Magog is where he's from. So it's Gog of Magog. Make sense? So it'd be like Rick from St. Paul. So if I made this to be Rick St. Paul, kind of like in Scandinavian countries where you're John's son, in a way. What do you guys think? So this is an Old Testament piece of art. This is referencing Gog from Magog. And if you look up the biblical reference, I'll let you look it up. It's a very interesting story. And this is the gate. So, but also in the ancient world, we had a guy named Alexander the Great, who mythology says that he kept Gog from Magog at bay by building a gate, building a famous gate in the ancient world. So this is a abstract reference to that gate.
Yeah, Rick, is modern art like always really abstract like that?
Not always, because we have contemporary art like by Chuck Close that's hyper realistic, right? It's a big portrait, way bigger than a portrait is in real life, right? A face. And so not always, but it can be. And this is what makes it confusing for people is they look at it and they don't know what it is. Because in the ancient world, you'd look at it, you knew what it was. You're like, oh, that's the temple, or that's Athena, or that's a horse, or that's a lion, or that's the king, that's the queen. And now our art is referencing things, but in a more abstract, maybe more sublime way or subtle way. And that's because we're modern people. And because of the timeline that I showed you on Monday, how diverse and individualistic we are. So that's what makes it difficult. Everybody's doing their own thing. So you have to do a little bit more work, like look for the title, ask some questions to understand what it is. So I'd say the distinction between old art, art before modernism, and art during modernism is before modernism, you didn't have to ask a lot of questions to know what you were looking at. With modern art, you have to ask a few questions like what's the title? What's the meaning? Who made it? What's the context in which it was made? So, for example, we're at the Walker Sculpture Garden. So, this is a temple to modern art. So, we should at least know where we are because of the location, the context of the museum. You'd expect to find modern
That's
art.
probably like also because like in the past, like they didn't all get education, but now we're like all pretty educated. So
Yep.
we like art we can ask questions about and like debate.
Yes, yes, yes. Art is more free to be more things because we're all more educated. Is that another way of putting it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're more educated. We have access to way more materials too than the average person would have had in 1800. Like you guys have access to tools and technology that people in the 1800s would be freaked out by if you showed it to them right now, like your iPhone, your car, even your sewing machine would be like, "Whoa, that's crazy." Like they might even say it's too fast. Okay, so I want to show you one other thing here before I go. Notice this. These benches, these are part of the art. This is an art piece by Jenny Holzer. What could you say about these benches, based on what you know so far from themes in art history? What is this? It's a little mini stone table. Yeah, you can't read it here. It says, some days you wake and immediately start to worry. Nothing in particular is wrong. It's just that suspicion that forces are aligning quietly and there will be trouble. So she's embedded quotes and thoughts on all these benches. So you
Some
can,
people said that it's kind of like the gravestones, like it
it's
gives
similar,
words.
right? But instead, it's a place to sit and contemplate for the living, right? But yeah, it definitely references tombstones because it's using the same materials and it's using the same technique of engraving into the stone. I'm not going to read all of them to you. All right. Where's our buddy Deborah Butterfield? Is she in here now? I wanted to show you guys a horse made out of sticks. If I don't find it, I can show it to you in class. But I'm gonna walk. I'm gonna walk up here towards a couple other pieces that are extremely modern. Any other questions? You guys, I think it's important to see the distinction between the old world, pre-modern art, and a modern art. And we've been into modern art for over 120 years.
Why did the artist make it resemble tombstones like that? What's her deal?
Well, I don't think it was referencing tombstones. I think she was just referencing benches. But she may have been referencing tombstones in a subtle way, saying, hey, you're alive. Well, we could ask her. She's alive. We could send her an email. Jenny Holzer is an amazing woman. So that's the nice thing about living artists is you could ask them. All right, I'm almost there. I want it to be a surprise. Here's something that, well, I'll set it up a little bit. This is this artist upsets people for some reason, and if you're willing to share that with the group, you can. If you're not, I understand. But it's a weird. Here we go. This is Ellsworth Kelly's. Can you guess what the title of this piece is? 2. No, it's not 2, but that's a good guess. I would give you guys a hint. It's referencing something else. Middle. I like middle, question mark. Any other? What do you guys think the title is? This is made out of steel. This is dance. Oh, I like dance. Yeah, it has movement, correct? You want to see how big it is? Look how big it is. You guys see that? This is by Ellsworth Kelly. How many of you, does anybody know who Ellsworth Kelly is? He's more famous as a painter. Angelica, can you describe Ellsworth Kelly's work in relationship to this piece and how it's similar?
He usually like does things like subtle movement is more like I feel like it's more important to him than doing like super fast, really bold things. I feel like he's really into like subtleties.
Yep.
And I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
color a little bit.
He's more minimal.
Yeah.
And he works with shapes and he also works with color, correct? Shapes and color. So this is called curve. This is called curve. Some of you guys were close. I saw a gap. This is called curve. So this is another thing that you see in modern art. It's the celebration of the elements of design. How many of you guys have taken how come I can't remember the class? Curve, yes, it's called curve. See, yep, Grace, it's called curve. So this is a celebration to the elements of design, right? These are 2 lines that are in the shape of a curve. They're thick and they're fat and they're black. And you get to look through them and walk through them. So you could maybe argue that this is a significant monumental sculpture to the basic principles of art. It's big. It's beautiful. There's a famous modernist joke. If you want to make a piece of important art in the modern world, make it big and make it red. Get up in here for you guys. You can walk through it. What are your guys' responses to Ellsworth Kelly's curve? He's one of our most celebrated. Um, he died a few years back, but he's one of our most celebrated artists, contemporary artists. He's highly successful. Like he got paid to make these his whole life. Thoughts on that? Yeah. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna say something crazy, and I'm not saying it to be derogatory or mean or something like this. You could not make this. You would not make. Number one, you wouldn't make it, and you can't make it right now. How long? Because why do you think that is? That you can't make this. You don't have what it takes to make this right now. Can you guess why? What? Yes, this is highly crafted. There's no flaws in it. It's perfect. That's hard to do. So it looks easy visually, right? Visually, it's easy to look at, but it's hard to make. What else? Why else can't you make this? There's another reason. Or another, I could put it another way. How long would it take you to train yourself to make this and to have the tools and the resources to make it? Yeah, Brady's saying he doesn't have access to that much metal. So you need access to this metal. How much does this metal cost to purchase and to transform into this? Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'll have to find out. I don't know. That's a good question. This is another famous steel sculpture or sculptor. This is Richard Serra. He's living, he's still alive. So he's using steel to do something very similar as Ellsworth Kelly. He's stacked this steel so that it supports itself. This is just holding itself up. I would say the most obvious thing, the reason why you couldn't make this is you don't have access to the people who move steel, right? To have steel made and to have steel moved. But another reason why you're seeing steel celebrated is it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of class. Steel is what makes the modern world churn around, right? And so, especially in our modern cities, is what we use to build our cities. It's what you use to make boats, modern metals. So one of the things that's hard to do sometimes as contemporary people is to stop and ask, how is the thing I'm looking at reflecting the values of my culture? Somebody just said something.
Yeah, he says that we don't think in the same way that the artist does, so that's why we couldn't create it.
Yes, we don't think like the artist. We're not. But what's interesting about that is if an artist lived in the ancient world, we could figure out how they think because how they think is directly related to what the pharaoh or the king or the culture wants. It's a little easier, but in an individualistic culture, it's harder. He didn't weld it; he had it made. He had it fabricated. I just saw that chat real quick on the screen. He had it fabricated. He is the one that he designed it and had it made. All right, let's get to the famous bit here. You guys ready? You guys probably all seen this. Why is there a cherry and a spoon in a pond? And why is it art? This is by Klaus Oldenburg. Klaus Oldenburg is a referred to as a pop artist. He's up. He's in the same era as.
I said that's made because you guys are the big cherry. I don't know what we are the big cherry means. Like Minnesota is the big cherry.
Maybe so. I don't know. But what if we brought somebody here who was from a different country? How would they know what this is? They would just say it's a big spoon and a cherry, right? How do we know what this is if you're from a foreign land? How, what is there any reference points for us? I like the juxtaposition of the basilica in the background, the old and the new. Any thoughts? Well, it goes back to kind of asking some questions again. What you have to ask: who are the pop artists, and what were the pop artists' values? But like we saw on Monday, the pop artists are a sub movement inside a bunch of other movements. So it takes some effort to figure out who the pop artists were, what their values were, and then from there, ask yourself the question: is this of value? Are the pop artists of value? You guys can see another pop artist in the background. We'll walk over there and finish with the love. But
Wasn't this artist famous for making a bunch of giant, like, everyday objects?
yes, yes, this artist, Klaus Oldenburg, like made really big lawn darts, like monumental lawn darts, or great big vacuum bags, like contemporary materials, contemporary items that you can purchase.
Why is the spoon twisted?
Well, it has an exaggerated bend in it. Is that what you mean? It's got this exaggerated bend. Yeah, it's been kind of exaggerated and bent, I think, to show off the curves. I think we can. One of the values of the pop artist was not to guess at any meaning of this, but just to enjoy it as a cherry in a spoon. Just like you'd enjoy a lawn dart. A lawn dart is just a lawn dart. So can you enjoy the beauty of a lawn dart? Or take it a next step further, can you enjoy the beauty that you live in a world that mass produces things on a scale that the ancient world couldn't fathom? So production, the means of production. So you're celebrating mass production. So the trick with any contemporary or modern art is to ask a few questions. Look at the title, understand the context of when it was made, and then it comes more alive to you. But it takes some effort. Any other questions about any of this? Does it make sense? It makes more sense to see it in person because then you can deal with its physicality that it actually exists.
Is it not necessary that every artwork has a meaning?
Yes, correct. Not every artwork has a deep meaning, I would say. It could be a simple meaning. Does that answer your question, Grace? So, for example, this. What does this mean? Yeah. So, why would we try to project onto this that it means something other than love? So, this is made out of steel. This is by Robert Indiana. He passed away a year and a half ago. So, he is a very much a modern artist. How many of you guys have seen the stamp? There's a love stamp. The Postal Service commissioned him to make a stamp with the same image. Anybody? Nobody's seen the stamp?
I've
Um,
seen the stamp. Yeah.
what was that,
I've seen the
Angelica? I
stamp.
didn't hear you.
I think, yeah, I've seen the stamp and a lot of other people have.
Yep. I think one of the things that you should notice about a lot of this modern art is that it's using classical materials. Not always, but it's using classical materials like steel and stone and bronze. We haven't, and brick, and all the things that existed in the ancient world we still have access to, but we're making different art with it. We're making more contemporary or art that's more in alignment with contemporary values. Because what if I made a sculpture of Zeus? None of you would care. You'd be like, well, Zeus isn't a part of our life anymore. Can you stop doing that? Unless I came up with a reason for you to care. Can you think of any conditions in which I could make something old and you guys as a group would care and value it? Give me some thoughts. How could I potentially make something old from the ancient world.
Lauren's asking if that sculpture is solid or hollow.
I believe it's hollow, but we'll find out. Yeah, it's hollow.
And then Rachel's asking, maybe it makes Zeus interesting if he's doing something atypical or modern.
Like make the ancient modern? Yeah. Guess where that exists in spades? That exists. I'm glad you brought that up, Rachel, because that's where I was going. How do you make the ancient modern? You change their names and you call them Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, right? You make new.
Question two.
Let's hear it.
He's asking if the person who actually wielded the art would technically be the artist instead of like the actual artist who's just commissioning people to do it.
So the author, so he's asking the question about the authorship, like who's the author? Well, let's put it. Okay, I'm going to answer the question in a different. I'm going to answer the question this way. How many of you think the printer who prints the books, should get credit for the book? Right? Is it the person who wrote the book or the person who produced the book? That's the author. That's the artist. I'm thinking of like any book that you like. Like if you read Harry Potter, did the printer, the person who physically printed the book, get the credit for the book, or does the author? Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but then in that aspect, like the author still wrote part of the book.
Yeah. But that's the thing with this sculpture. That's what I'm saying with this sculpture is that the author designed this sculpture and had somebody fabricate it to the exact specs that they designed it. Just like an author would craft words. Does that help? Or no? Yeah, it gets tricky because the people who produce the things in our culture don't get credit anymore for being a major part of the process. How many of you know the printer by name who printed Harry Potter, or the printer by name who prints the Bible? Like what that in the ancient world, you probably would have known the craftsman. The craftsman would have been an integral part to the process. See, there's a couple more questions, Angelica. Yeah. What is something in space? I don't know. Look it up.
Also, Grace says that you can or songs to make Zeus interesting.
Yeah. Kind of like the were those Percy Jackson books for the children's, the young adult novels. Yep. Notice this over here. That kind of referencing a temple, you guys think? Those are made out of cinder blocks. This is by Solowit. It's called X. Maybe it's X marks the spot. Maybe there's a treasure there. Notice we're also in the prairie, which is kind of fun. We have a big blue chicken. Do we worship chickens? In the ancient world, when you made something big and important, it usually was a reference to your leader or your religious figures. Do you think we worship chickens? Or sorry, a rooster. My apologies. I know, I'm tired. I haven't had enough coffee. All right, class period. I just want you guys to think about this and see that the ancient world, we have abandoned it. Right? Wouldn't you say? It's still with us. We have these old ways of building like the basilica, but we're surrounded by new things. I encourage you guys all to come down to the sculpture gardens. They're free. They're open, I believe, 24/7. I'm not sure about into that. Does anybody have any questions about the work for this week? Moodle? How many of you are starting to realize how much of a modern person you are? Like you're highly influenced by your modern values.
Asking, are we doing the Zoom discussion on Friday?
We are doing the discussion on Friday. We're going to meet at the stone table. Those of you who want to meet in person, we're going to meet and do this exercise in person. Those of you who cannot, I'll make breakout rooms in Zoom. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, here we are. We got to finish on one of my favorite things. All right, check this out. Here's the horse made of sticks.
And then one is asking, do we have to turn in notes for that
Yes.
assignment?
Yes, I've outlined on Moodle that I want you to make. Each individual is going to take notes or bullet points or highlights of your conversation, and you'll be turning that out on Moodle. So yes, be prepared to take notes about your conversation. Is this a great horse? This isn't made out of sticks, my friends. This is actually bronze. So it was cast in bronze. It looks like sticks.
Asking, what's the difference between notes and bullet points?
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is however you want to take notes, you can take notes. There's no restrictions on how you take the notes. So the ideas and the themes that you discussed, it doesn't have to be in paragraph form, is what I'm saying. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. I want the notes to come natural. I don't want you to feel like they have to be this perfect thing. They can be in your iPad. You can scroll them out. You can scroll them on a piece of paper, take a picture of it. However, makes it easy for you. Any other questions before I sign off? You can end with that. This is Deborah Butterfield. She lives in Montana. What do you think she loves and values?
Horses.
Yep, she loves horses. She makes horses, beautiful horses. Isn't this amazing? How like anatomically accurate it is, and it's just found pieces of branch and bark that then have been molded and casted. So all this stuff has been molded and then cast in bronze and then reassembled. Deborah Butterfield. Her husband's name is John Buck, and he's a printmaker. And he makes sculptures too. But this is cast in bronze. This
So, asking, why is it cast in bronze?
I'm gonna ask it back. Why do you think it's cast in bronze?
I think if it's real wood, it will decay.
Exactly. It will last longer. So those of you who want to be known as an artist, creative person, designer, I would start making things out of rocks and steel and bronze. Maybe brick, but the brick doesn't last as long as these things. All right, guys. Well, have a good rest of your day. If you have any questions, send me some emails, okay? All right, bye, guys. Thanks, Greg. Do you think our audio worked?